Ladies and gentlemen and variations thereof, welcome to the Selectives Lorecast, a casual Elder Scrolls podcast. My name is Rotten Deadite, and with me today are...
Felix, otherwise known as Banu Hanamsaishi.
And I'm Andrew, also known as the White Guar.
And
Apparently
we are
you
continuing
can't
our
shout.
36 lessons of Vivec with Sermon 5.
Yeah, oh boy, we're getting in there. Only what,
Yeah.
30?
Only 31 more to go.
I have to get real intimate with the mic.
No, this is not an ASMR stream, sir.
No.
Sir,
No.
sir, stop sexualizing my stream, sir.
No, Muck.
Sir.
What are you going to do about it?
Sir. Sir, stop it.
We're very serious professionals.
This is a serious podcast, all right?
We're super serial right now.
So this is the
Well, I'm sorry, it's casual. That's what it was.
Right? Yeah. No.
Will we do Sermon
right.
37? I'm warming up to 37, Owain, actually.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
I'm
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
I'm kind of thinking
And
about doing
then-
it. Yeah.
And
What-
then
what-
Sermon 0.
Yeah, we could do
why
Sermon
not?
0. Yeah, sure.
Why not?
We should do Sermon 0 and then 37, but do it chronologically. Anywho. So when we left off, Vivec was tripping the light fantastic in the simulacrum of the Netchman's wife. Her mother had just been destroyed by the Dwemer because they are dickholes. And you know, I mean, again, as with all things in the 36 lessons, politics, reality, who could say?
Unreliable narrator. See the other video
Yeah.
for that.
The literal definition of unreliable narrator. Yeah, Sermon 0. Yeah, Wayne, Sermon 0. It was, nobody's really sure 100% who wrote it. Kirkbride said he didn't, but he's pretty sure it was Kuhlman.
Yeah. I thought Coleman came
Did
out
he-
and said he wrote it.
Did he?
But-
Oh, okay.
Or was it Julian LaFay?
Oh, it could have been.
It was someone who wanted to provide almost a contrary
Mhm.
view to what the 36 lessons give.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the other way.
And it was very
and-
silly.
Yeah, and I know that LaFay and Kirkbride have a lot of creative differences in how they want to approach fantasy. So, but I mean, Coleman's also, you know, a great writer, and
Mhm.
so it, in my mind, it's one or the other. I'm not sure which one.
I just
So
view it
the
as like in terms of Greek philosophers, you have most of those guys like, this is like Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and then Kirkbride is kind of like a Diogenes, just like, listen here, okay, behold the man. And you're like, all right, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
that's a god, all right, like
Okay.
that's kind of how it is.
So apparently the Dwemer had built the simulacrum of the Netchman's wife shoddily in their haste. And the ashes of Red Mountain had slowed its golden tendons, which, by the way, gives us a little bit of a clue about what the simulacrum looks like. It may or may not have been immediately. It may have been sort of like a little bit like the I forget what they're called in ESO. Help me out, Andrew. The Sothasils, not replicants.
Oh, the Fabricants.
Fabricants, yes. So something obviously mechanical, for example. But still gold because we are emulating the look of the Chimer, who were supposedly golden skinned. Although I don't think we ever got like a confirmation from an artist about whether or not they were actually golden skinned or just like golden skinned like the Altmer are golden skinned.
Yeah,
That's kind of the view I've leaned to, because
Me
they
too.
basically were
Yeah.
from Somerset Isle. They were just exiles from there, so I'm like, they were basically rebellious Altmer, so they should have been about, you know, the same height, you know,
And yeah,
yeah.
then obviously, like,
physical
changed,
appearance,
but,
yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
I've
like that
always
to me was kind of like they probably just look like Altmer.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah. I
Hmm?
think personally, I think they might have looked more like Chimer, because I am somewhat convinced that the Dwemer were a subset of the Chimer,
Oh.
and that's why we don't get any history of the origin of the Dwemer anywhere. They just kind of show up, and so it would make sense. And in one book, they're described as a house of the Chimer.
They're
so-
described as a house of the of Resdania.
Yeah, yeah.
Because they when Resdania kicks in, they were invited into the house system, and so they got their own air quotes house
Oh, okay.
as part of the
must have
political
missed that
system of Resdania. So,
That's fair.
So before long, it fell on its knees beside the roads to the land of the Indoril and pitched over to be discovered 80 days later by a merchant caravan on its way to the capital of Veloth and on Amalexia. So this is an interesting idea that the capital of Veloth used to be called Amalexia.
I thought it always was like Mournhold is the capital, but it's like within the greater city of Almalexia.
Yeah,
Oh, is
like
it?
like
Okay.
like Vatican City is within Rome.
Right.
Yeah, but Vatican City is technically separate. Like,
Oh well, yeah.
The way I've viewed it is like Mournhold is akin to Almalexia, what say Capitol Hill is to DC. It's like it's an area within where like the ruling class like
I was going
the
other direction, that Almalexia was the smaller piece, but that makes it, if Mournhold is the name of the Capitol Hill of Almalexia.
Yeah, that's how I always interpreted it. That was like the main.
I mean, ESO suggests that that's not the case, since the whole place is called Mournhold, but that doesn't mean we have to accept that, because that's stupid.
Or maybe it's just one of those things where it's like it's both, it's the same, it's neither, it's whatever you want it to be, baby.
Well, let me see, because I happen to be in ESO right now. Let me pull up.
There you go.
Yeah, just the Tribunal Temple is what her temple's called. It's the Mournhold Way Shrine. The icon for the city is just called Mournhold. So they seem to have gotten away or forgotten about the fact that Almalexia's name was tied to that at all. Which is kind of unfortunate, I think.
It could also just be a historic thing of like in the first like early time it used to be called that, and then later on like cities do get renamed or like they started something and then like the name changes over time.
Constantinople and
like my hometown has changed names before. That was the other one. Like it used to be like somewhere in America was like it was like New York was New Amsterdam, then it became New York. So like that stuff can happen throughout history.
Portland was going to be called Stumptown, if you didn't know that.
Stump?
That should have been a way better name.
because of all the logging, they left there were fields of stumps. So
that makes sense.
Stumptown. Yep.
Yeah.
Vivec had not been among his people all the days of his pre-life, so he stayed silent and let the Chimer and the caravan think that the simulacrum was broken and empty. There's no information about, well, it's a merchant caravan, but it doesn't say what they were shipping, does it?
Salt, spice, Kwama eggs.
Yeah, Kwama eggs, that kind of stuff.
It's not important to Vivec's divinity.
So a Chimeri warrior who was protecting the cavern said, "Look here how the Dwemer try to fool us as ever, crafting our likenesses out of their flesh metals." That's okay. So all right. So just a little note here. There's
it's
like
a sex doll.
Well, okay, I wasn't exactly going to go there, but I was going to say that. But yeah, sure, why not? But I was going to say that Dwemer body pillows or whatever. But I was going to say that there is sort of a theory that that when the Dwemer vanished, the phrase that is used by Vivec is that when the Dwemer vanished, they became the golden skin of Numidium. And some people have interpreted that literally, which in my opinion is a mistake, to say that they literally became the skin of the giant stompy robot. Chimer-chan, get out of my chat. And they had, and this might back that up a little bit. The idea of the Dwemer having something called flesh metals. I don't know. We should take this to the capital and show our mother I.M. She'll want to see this new strategy of our enemies, which is an interesting idea.
So a thing about the caravan. You said you weren't sure what goods they were transporting. I should point out, a caravan isn't necessarily just goods transportation. It can be just a group of people moving from one area to the next. So, like pilgrims or something, So it could be that there's some kind of, I doubt we're viewing the Velothi Exodus. because
No,
I
but
feel
I think it said merchant caravan, and
Oh,
that
did it say merchant caravan?
Mhm.
Is that what
Yeah.
it said?
Yeah,
Definitely a
Oh,
merchant
merchant,
caravan.
usually
okay,
that means
okay.
that like they're actually carrying whatever their goods are that they're moving around to sell.
Goods and whatever.
I missed that the first mention said merchant.
Or British folks getting back to nature. That's ill-advised.
Oh, blimey, there's bugs out here.
Oh my. So the merchant captain says, I doubt we shall be paid well for the effort. We can make more money if we stop at Nurmak and sell it to the Red Wives of Dagon, who will pay well for the wonders made by the deep folk. Okay, so let's talk about the Red Wives of Dagon, which...
Yes, but hang on. I did want to briefly talk about the flesh metals thing. In one of my rare moments of seriousness, I know, apologies, I'll get back to being silly soon. That to me, and I could be wildly wrong here, but the first thing that came to mind was kind of like not like Cybertrunks, but like extra limbs that people can craft either with 3D printing that amputees wear, so it's like styled to look like, you know, your arm, your hand, or like you know, your leg. And it can be stylized in a bunch of different ways, but it's a mobility aid first and foremost, right? So the idea of flesh metals could be a literary creative device of like, hey, look at this cool, you know, robot arm or womb or leg, or, you know, total robot person kind of
robot
thing,
person.
Right? Like that's kind of how I interpret flesh metals. Yes, Red Wives of Dagon.
Yes, Red Wives of Dagon. So I don't know if we've heard of the Red Wives of Dagon anywhere else.
No,
to my knowledge, no, but I could be wrong.
It sound like evil nuns.
Well, I mean, yeah. Well, okay. Well, yeah. But see, one of the things that I kind of like about Chimer culture is the complete integration of Daedra worship, and the way that, like, for example, this merchant captain is, you know, at all times probably thinking about getting his ass back to the, you know, to the Red Wives of Dagon. We can assume that by Dagon they mean Mehrunes Dagon, which is certainly the conclusion that UESP takes, and I think it's a good conclusion. To call them the Red Wives is interesting because the color of red when associated with Mehrunes Dagon is usually symbolizes violence or blood of some kind. In Western esotericism, the color red is unbelievably complicated. And I don't really feel qualified to talk about it, but if anybody in chat knows anything or wants to Google, everybody wants to Google anything about the color red and the symbolism of Western esotericism, there's probably some stuff on there. Baka, you're going exactly where I was going with this. I think the Red Wives of Dagon are associated with, are kind of like a BDSM cult, sort of, which fits well with Mehrunes Dagon's idiom. With his shtick, you could say, and yeah, and I think, I mean, I don't want to kink shame, but I think the merchant captain's into some freaky shit, and
I had an even darker thought, so okay, I'm surprised.
Whether or not they're, you know, like assassins or something similar is a different thing altogether. But blood play is a thing in BDSM. That is a kink. That is a subtext to BDSM. There's yeah, violence and change. If we were talking about Molag Bal, then the wives of Molag Bal would, well, those would be vampires actually, so never mind. But like a sex cult associated with Molag Bal would be obvious what we were talking about. For Mehrunes Dagon, I think we're not really talking about. I just, something in the back of my head is telling me is sort of like formulating this idea of like a very violent S&M cult, and there is a mention later on in this chapter that the Red Wives of Dagon are wise in belly magic, which is where is that? The Red Wives' form of recompense, which was four-cornered and good wounded, a belly magic known for nowhere else under the moons. Good wounded is almost certainly a vaginal reference. But it could be, but it doesn't have to be. We could literally be talking about actual flesh wounds, and that's what the merchant captain is into. He's into getting sliced up. The vampire community recently did a responsible blood play PSA. They came to the Thrillbilly culture has been doing. Oh, the Thrillbilly culture has a version. Okay, that's interesting. Interesting in quotes.
Wow. What a time to be alive,
Baka, I agree. It might be CNC. Yeah. Mevrin's Dagon could be healthy, personal introspection, BDSM change. I agree. I think that is like Molag Bal. I think is probably going to be like a much more sort of like, break me down kind of what I think they call what is it? I can't remember. There's gentle dom, and then there's a I think it's primal or something, and it's basically what I'm getting at for people who know anything about BDSM is I suspect that Molag Bal pushes the hard list, basically, and I think that Mehran's Dagon's cult might be a little bit more about pushing boundaries to see how far you can get before you have to stop. Whereas Molag Bal's is going to be like, it's like Mehran's Dagon would be pushing your hard list to see where, like, how much progress you've made. Whereas Molag Bal will be pushing the hard list until you actually you hit I can't remember what it's called. It's the brain state you hit in really really hardcore BDSM where you just shut down altogether. And primal play could be part of it. Yeah, I think so. And yeah, Molag Bal is the best case scenario is it's CNC or like free use stuff. Subspace, thank you, Baka. Yeah, I don't think Molag Bal practices aftercare. I don't think that's what you're gonna get. But you might get that in Mehran's Dagon because the idea of like destruction and change would encourage like the idea of like getting back on your feet after a rough experience. Anyway, that's a lot of kink for we're only 15 minutes in here.
Yay.
Yeah. So I think that I'm getting ahead in this. Yeah, Baka, I know where you're headed with that. So another chimer, a different one, who is wise in the ways of prophecy, looked on the simulacrum with disquietude. Was I not hired to help you seek the best of fortunes? I say you should listen to your warrior then and take this thing to Iam, for though manufactured by our enemies, there is something in it that will become sacred or has been already. This is an interesting idea that merchant captains would hire fortune tellers. Probably, I'm betting, to sort of help the chimer find safe routes or similar. And I think that I really like the sort of multi-layered thing that the chimer development, the Velothi cultural development has of it's not just ancestor worship and wink wink not necromancy, and it's we're seeing things about like fortune tellers and the relationship that they generally have to wise women. And it's interesting that this wise person would be that this prophet or whatever would be able to take a look at the simulacrum and intuit that there's some kind of sacredness to it. The merchant captain took pause and then looked at the simulacrum. The Neshman's wife, though he heeded always the advice of his seers, could do more than to think of the prophet made at Nurmak. Here we're talking about the four-cornered and good wounded. There's four-cornered, of course, is the four-cornered of the House of Trouble, so maybe we could say the Red Wives of Dagon do, like, practice some stuff that's associated with the other three corners of the House of Trouble, which would be Molag Bal again, which is interesting. We're kind of headed there already, so maybe that just pushes us further into BDSM. And then the idea of them associating themselves in some way with Sheogorath scares the shit out of me, because the last thing in the world you want is a crazy dom. Or I assume. Maybe not. Maybe that's her shit.
Girlfriends. What?
What? Oh my god, he went there. His lust made him deny Iam his mother. He gave order to change course for Normak. Nurmuk. Before the caravan could get underway again, the Chimeri warrior who had counseled a passage to the capital threw his money to the merchant captain and said, I will pay you thus for the simulacrum and warn you, war is coming with the shaggy men of the north, read Nords, and I will not have my mother. I am at uneven odds with one enemy while tending to another, which makes sense. This turns out to be Nerevar.
Yeah, I figured.
Nerevar, the merchant captain, said, this is not enough. I am Triune in my own way, but I follow the road of my body and demand more. So, I can't imagine any scenario where what the merchant captain is doing would be considered kosher by the tribunal. Especially considering the actual circumstances was actually happening. But if they were traveling, and if the merchant caravan was traveling and found the simulacrum, and it wasn't, if it was just a Dwemer construction, then it does kind of make sense to me that like, the merchant captain would sort of just be like, nah, we're not doing that. Vivec could not remain silent anymore and said into Nerevar's head these words, you can hear these words, so run away. Come, Hortator, unfold into a clear unknown. Stay quiet until you slept in the yesterday, and say no elegies for the melting stone. Okay. So, let's do our best on this. I have never been able to get the phrase, the recommendation that he runs away. I don't understand that. I think that might be just general poetry. But much of it is easier to process.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say unfold into a clear unknown is very similar to the folding of the, the Chancellor's Certitude, I think? No, who was it? The Old Bone, which folds itself into something like milk. A clear unknown is a contradiction in terms. It's a very Vivecian phrase. It's clarity in it's a letter written in uncertainty, etc. Lots of godmen have this part of story where they flee for a time. Oh yeah, that's true. That is sometimes you do get like a flight from in mythology, but that's definitely not what Nerevar does at this point. He doesn't run away at all. Anyway, stay quiet until you've slept in the yesterday. A little vague. Again, could be more poetry. Say no elegies for the melting stone. That's probably a reference to Molag Bal, since his name is Firestone, but I don't know how that's relevant here.
Yeah, I mean, it might be because stone, to my understanding, has associations with history. So maybe it's referring to a meta acknowledgement of the story that's being told.
I'm gonna bring this
something along those lines.
Hello.
Now, I don't know what to do with slept in yesterday. Unfold into a clear unknown sounds like just kind of go where the wind's gonna take you. You don't know where you're gonna go. Just kind of walk the path, and it'll be the right one. But the genealogies from Melting Stone. I mean, it's not things being forgotten, because otherwise it would be drowned lamps.
Yeah. A stone that becomes water, or liquid. Perhaps.
Yeah, and that's because to my mind, so water is memory, ice I've always considered to be truth. Stone is history. It's the solidified truth. Yes,
in Sermon 11, soon you will become the grandparent of a broken state. You will be mocked. It will fall apart like a stone that recalls it is really water. That's kind of what I think. That's maybe what the symbolism here is.
History
is that it's
that's actually just memory and therefore biased.
Well, it's if water or liquid is a memory, then what we're talking about is something definite, like current, the current a city or a culture or politics or whatever, or an actual city that then dissolves into memory. So say no elegies for the melting stone is a little bit like saying don't mourn don't mourn things that are becoming memory. In other words,
Yeah. So
the progress of the current into the past.
Yeah, I mean that I also feel like that can apply to if you go somewhere and then leave. You know, if you leave your hometown and you're homesick. I mean,
okay.
Your home is a memory. You are not there right now.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's related to that unfold into a clear unknown. Go where thou wilt.
Yeah.
I think we're kind of dancing around the core thing here, right? If like the core of the 36 lessons is that Vivec is actually talking to you, the Nerevarine, who's reading this. This is about the prisoner. Like that's how I've interpreted it. You've heard the words, so run away. Only the prisoner can do that. Unfold down to like an unknown path. Only the prisoner is like sort of unchained in this sense from the machinations of the Arbus. So
I'm not doubting you. I just don't see it.
Yeah. Go into it more. Oh, so you're saying that
say more.
Yeah, say more things.
Okay. So you can hear the words, so run away. And like near the end of that, you also have the ending of the words is Alm Civis. If you want to make that tenuous connection of like, oh, like you can hear and understand the words of Vivec and the secret path, the godhood. So, okay, so maybe that's part of it. But also the idea of running away is kind of being able to choose one's own destiny, which is reinforced by the second line. Come, Hortator, which is again necessary as the Nerevarine to become Hortator. To like fulfill the prophecy, unfold into a clear unknown. Well, hey, look, kid, the world is your oyster. We drop you off at the dock at Satanine and like go fight a mud crab. Find the magical boots of jumping as the Bosmer falls from the sky and you're traumatized as a 12-year-old. Or, you know, actually just get the main plot underway. Like do what you want. It's the world is your oyster. Stay quiet until you slept in the yesterday. Now, some people could say, oh, well, you know, it's a fourth
meta
because it's a video game. So,
it's about sleeping and you can level up.
And then go to an earlier save.
I mean, yeah, that's like the low hanging fruit.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like in terms of like the in-universe way though of trying to interpret that, stay quiet until you slept in the yesterday. That could be then be related to memory. It could be related to the concept of like finding peace in like, you know, your journey towards, you know, whether it's godhood, becoming a king or becoming like, you know, a success in your own right, whatever it may be. So it's like, you know, to pause and reflect on what got you to this point, and say no elegies for the melting stone. This one, I admit, like, I don't have much to go on here, but the first thing that came to mind with regards to melting stone was the heart of Lorcan for a couple reasons. And like, so like, sure, maybe that could be like tied into, you know, love and stuff like that. And like, you know, set free what you love, even if it may hurt you. I mean, the idea of like, you know, it's a stone, but it's a heart. And like, I know it sounds cheesy, but hearts can melt, right? So, you know, the melting stone, I'm like, okay, that to me, and given like Red Mountain, Resdania, all that kind of stuff, it just kind of, to me anyway, made a tenuous bit of sense that it has to do with the heart of Lorcan, and that this ultimately is actually supposed to be, you know, like sure he's speaking to Nerevar, but he's actually speaking to you, the Nerevarine in the future. Well, that's kind of how I've always interpreted this.
That third line, I can't help but wonder if he's talking about Amaranth. Stay quiet until you slept in yesterday. Anu hid in the sun and slept.
Yep.
Right.
Whoa.
Is that talking about the yesterday being the previous dream? Stay quiet until you've slept there and you've become Amaranth. You have become, you know, in the now. You have become the new god.
Is that true, Owain? It's hard to recall the realization that constructions are not real as the melting stones. I'm not getting any fast hits.
Oops. Caps lock. So
I
I'm yelling.
apparently have a
I'm
ton.
yelling at Google.
No.
Yeah, right.
I'm gonna put melting stone in quotation marks. I don't see. Yeah, I got no hits with Sartre and melting stone.
Just Google melting stone then. See what that turns up.
Well, you Google
I'm just
philosopher and
gonna
stone,
get-
and you get a whole bunch of stuff about,
Yeah.
the philosopher's stone.
Yep. I'm gonna get a lot of like
Fucking
a lot of-
wizards.
That's a neat kind of. I found a piece of art. It's a rock with a notch cut in it, and another rock squeezed into that notch, and it looks like the rock is like folding.
Yeah, that's a.
Yeah, I saw that. That
that's-
was like a technique that indigenous people in South America did.
Mhm.
And of course,
so
on Ancient
cool.
Aliens, they're like, must have been
Aliens!
alien technology. And then they
Yeah.
finally kind of figured out what it was because they finally listened to the indigenous people where they said, we basically made this concoction of a variety of different like local plants and like refinements and stuff that we did. And it basically made like liquid. So it was basically a kind of moldable concrete almost. And it's like, oh, that's how they did it.
Yeah.
No, it was aliens who like lifted it with like magical levitation technology and put it in. I'm like, motherfuckers.
Mhm.
Yeah. All I'm seeing is clear melting stone sphere quartz crystal ball scenery
Yeah.
sphere from Amazon.
Yeah, Wayne, look into see if you can find who that was.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure Aramithius would know, but he couldn't make it today.
Oh,
so.
did I?
But, in any case, though, for me, in terms of the in-universe, melting stone was always the heart of Lorcon.
Yeah, obviously.
Okay, Google. Look up polka.
Alexa. Alexa, please come back. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Baby, come back. Okay. So, anyway, after this brief poem, Nerevar hears this voice in his head and immediately cuts the head off of the merchant captain and takes over the and takes over the caravan for his own. That's a hell of a promotion. That's a good way to do it.
I mean that
Also, hey,
implies-
parable to the fight between Jubal and Sul and
Mhm.
Chlalu here.
And yep. That's right.
Because like
that's-
merchants, capitalism is probably Chlalu. Just saying.
Very unlikely a mistake. Yeah. You can tear me apart. Huh. All right.
We have fun here.
Sermon 6 is actually pretty short.
Sermon 6 is pretty short. We're actually going to haul ass through this one.
Yeah.
So Sermon 6 is the first of these sort of I guess they're like instructional videos that Vivec gives you during the 36 lessons of Vivec. They start taking on the term was it the scriptures in later sermons is what they end up being called. But in the meantime, Sermon 6 is the first of the... so when Vivec says you can hear the words, this is probably what he's talking about. He's probably talking about the words of the 36 lessons. In other words, the ones that are ended by Om Sabi. And this is the first of the lessons that Vivec gives Nerevar, presumably while they're on the road, which is a great experience. You've already killed your boss. Everybody else in the caravan is eyeballing you because they're like, that dude just fucking snapped and cut our boss's head off. And he says this Dwemer construction is talking to him, and this is what lucky Nerevar here's what he gets to hear in his head. Oh, I'll bet you it's going to be just a great lesson that's going to be totally obvious and make a whole lot of sense. You have discovered the sixth sermon of Vivec, which is hidden in the words that came next to the Hortator. There is an eon within itself, that when unraveled becomes the first sentence of the world. Well, there goes that idea. I guess I guess it's gonna be nothing but acid trips for the rest of Nerevar's life.
Yeah, baby. Free drugs. Woot,
It's just gonna be Pink Floyd lyrics from here until his death's door.
It's just Echoes Part 1 and 2 on repeat.
Right. And there is an eon within itself that when unraveled becomes the first sentence of the world. So this is more sort of like what it says to me is more of like this, the Hindu idea of absolutely gigantic spans of time taking place in what ends up being in a galactic sense a minuscule amount of time. It's big picture stuff. I don't recall off the top of my head if I said anything smarter than that. In the New Whirling School. Okay, so the idea of time looping itself is, yeah, that's true. Yeah, so the idea of loops of time is kind of important from like an Elder Scrolls perspective when we're talking about Kalpic cycle. The idea of time looping inside of itself is repeated again in Vec's teaching. Where did I must have had an idea here.
Uh-oh, can't remember the idea.
Yeah, it's always nice going back on old shit you wrote and being like, what the fuck?
But yeah, like, or the Ouroboros, you see that with the Red Guards with Satak and then Akel and then Satakal. You have it in Coda, where at the end, at the wedding, Akatosh starts to eat his tail again. He's the god of time. That's the clear association we're supposed to make. Ouroboros is in like medieval manuscripts showed the similar thing of like a dragon or a wyvern, or what's the one where it's just got 2 wings but like no legs? It's like a
drake.
Yeah, okay, a drake, drake, eating its own tail. And you're like, okay, so
2 wings,
cyclical. Sure, it may repeat, it rhymes, etc. It's patterns. That's again like something that you just constantly see in this universe.
Well, and I mean the Ouroboros has huge symbolism even just in real life. I mean, look at the never-ending story. They've got that complex snake like eating itself. If you ever saw that, what was that, 1982 when that movie came out? I watched that tons as a kid.
And then a similar version is in like this Buddhist kind of like stylized knot.
Yeah,
it's like like 8 times in different ways, and
then I'm sure there's like a Celtic knot somewhere that probably has a
sure, definitely. Are you kidding?
I'm sure that's gotta be somewhere. I can't think of one I've ever seen, but it seems so obvious.
Yeah, basically lots of cultures have realized that like while we are experiencing time in a linear direction in a bigger picture sense, it's all kind cyclical. Of going back to the same place, and then it kind of starts all over again.
What, other than not the Kalpa, isn't there another Hindu idea like the epoch or something? Isn't that Hinduism?
Well, there's an actual, like in terms of like physics, there's a theory that the universe has never not existed, which is an odd thing to wrap your head around, that it never had a beginning or an end.
I like the idea of the universe as having a beginning and an end, and then it begins again. So like it's all expanding out.
That's what they mean.
It's going to stop expanding and then start contracting,
and then it'll expand again.
It's going to be like, oh shit, it's too intense, and then it's going to blow up again, and it's going to like, that's the cycle of the universe, just constant expanding and contraction, and then like explosion and contraction. Like
the thought puzzle, the thought experiment in physics is that it's about the universe never. It's about effectively that the universe expands and contracts and so on, but at no point did it ever have an actual beginning to start its expansion and contraction. It's just always done it. It's always been there. And one of the reasons why this is still kind of being debated around a little bit in theoretical physics is that there's 2 ways of thinking about this. The first one is that it has literally always been there, and the second way to think about it is it may not have existed at any given point, but at the point in which it didn't exist, neither did time, neither did space, so it doesn't really matter because you can't really consider an existence. So it's just simply not worth thinking about, is kind of like the argument, is that if the universe didn't exist, then we don't give a flying rat's ass what it was like before then, because none of what existed, none of that would have applied to our current universe.
It doesn't affect us anymore.
Yeah.
It's all it's fairy tales at that
so
point.
For denizens of this universe who are subject to its rules, it doesn't matter what happened beforehand. It's asking what a C note smells like.
Eggs.
Well, there are people out there who could tell you that.
Yeah, like depends who you ask.
But I know where you're coming from, Owain. Yeah. So the bit about in the Psijic Endeavor is Veloth describes the Psijic Endeavor as a process of glorious apotheosis, where time itself is bent inward and outward into a shape that is always new. So that's what I think that's what I was thinking of. And there's the aeon in Gnosticism that we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that second line being a reference to either the Celtic cycle or Amaranth. Because if we think about that poem from the last sermon, I mean, are we continuing to talk about Amaranths maybe? Because I mean that is Vivec's overall goal. Can we agree on that? Is to become Amaranth? That's why Coda happens. And...
See, I don't necessarily know if Vivec at this point in the 36 lessons even knew what the Amaranth was. There are references to what we think might be the Amaranth.
Yeah, I mean, because Sotha Sil supports that by saying
the idea
Vivec wants to be everything all at once.
Yeah,
but they can
right.
only
I need
be
to see
Vivec.
that film. I hear it's a good film.
What film?
Everything.
Everything everywhere all at once.
That Michelle Yeoh.
Yeah, if Michelle Yeoh's in it, you need to see it. That's just truth.
Oh, yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, two Asian actresses I would highly recommend would be Michelle Yeoh and Bridget Lin. If Bridget Lin's in something, then I'll watch it. I don't care what it is.
Speaking of things to watch, I watched last night's episode of The Boys, and
yeah, I know a lot of people are saying that was really good.
Oh, it was so great.
At this point, I'm scared to start it because there's just so much. I haven't even seen it.
3-4 seasons?
Only 3.
Yeah, I have like another. We have to finish watching Moon Knight, and then I think another MCU movie the new Doctor Strange movie just came out, and then we'll be done. Yeah. We'll be completely caught up with the MCU, but then we have to start with.
Sam Raimi did great with Enter the Multiverse.
I heard, but then my wife and I have to start watching all the Star Wars stuff that's been happening because we missed Boba Fett and we haven't seen any of Obi-Wan. So yeah.
Okay, well,
I haven't seen it.
And I think the other MCU thing I need to watch is She-Hulk.
Yeah, I mean the
is that out?
Boys.
I thought it was, isn't it? Or
no, I don't think it's. I don't think it's out yet. I know the trailer is, and I know that we know that Mark Ruffalo is involved.
Of course he is.
That, yeah. We know that there's probably going to be some crossovers with Daredevil.
Tim Roth is in it. Guess what he's playing?
Yeah. Who's Tim Roth?
And also, side note, I know we're wildly off track right now, but I've really been enjoying Ms. Marvel. Like, it's actually just a lot of fun.
Is it good? Okay.
Like, I've actually had like some good chuckles and just fucking like this is adorable. Like, this is silly. This is cringy. It's fun. Like, I like a lot of what's going on there. There's some stuff that I don't like in terms of like stylistic choices
if you have
delivery, but for the most part, I'm like, I'm having a good time watching Ms. Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
If you have off topic on your bingo card, now's the time to mark it up.
Yeah, assuming you haven't already. So Mephala and Azura are the twin gates of tradition, and Boethia is the secret flame. Twin gates of tradition is not 1,000,000% identified. I took some guesses at it in the New Whirling School and said that it's probably a way of expressing the idea that they are the Daedra through whose instruction one can become a member of Alathi society. That makes sense to me because Mephala, or Boethia, I should say, seems to be a little bit more of like a guardian entity and more of like a martial arts instruction, like a military thing. But on occasion, Vivec talks about Mephala as if Mephala fills that role. So it's
tradition is guns and God, y'all. Like,
yeah, that's right. I mean, God dang right, Kate Kona's hell.
I don't think it needs to be. It doesn't need to be pointed out that the 3 Daedra mentioned there are the anticipations.
No, of course it is. Yeah.
So we have, if we were to think of them and their tribunal counterparts, we have Vivec and Sotha Sil as the 2 pillars of this doorway, and Almalexia is the wielder of the secret flame.
Right. And it's also worth mentioning that Boethia as a secret flame is relevant to Vivec's prayer that he gives to her mother.
Secret flame.
Yeah. As in the fire is mine.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of symbolism with fire. I mean, just that's a big one. But I mean, I can't help but think of Prometheus, and that story, but also the idea of, because a lot of images of Vivec, specifically ones made by Kirkbride, have Vivec with her head on fire. And that is a symbol of divinity that we might associate with like a halo or a sun disk. Same general concept.
Well, let me tell you some stories from the East.
Do it.
So before Islam got really hardcore into the whole no depictions of Muhammad, they kind of got around this by not painting his face, but he was always denoted as like this faceless entity with his head aflame. Similar uses have been used in Persian and this also like Northern Indian art as the tradition moved into Northern India due to like early Indo-Aryan conquest and stuff like that. That were again because like it's not just Prometheus is the Greek one, therefore the Western one. Every culture has basically some kind of trickster deity story involving like how mankind got fire. There's always a story somewhere there.
I think indigenous Americans have like the coyote trickster.
It's like coyote, it's raven, it's like, you know, the trickster rabbit tricks him into like, you know, burning down the forest because he doesn't like Mr. Fox or something like that. Like there's always something that happens in a story. I forget, but I know I read the Chinese version at one point. Like some guy brought fire, and so especially in like a lot of these Eastern cultures from especially Asia, the tradition is that fire is associated as well with wisdom. It's purifying in a lot of ways. It's why you have like the ring of flames around Shiva and his destruction aspect, because fire, you know, it cleans out forests but allows for new growth to happen. It's a devastating but sadly unfortunate cycle of rebirth and renewal.
Which is why it would be associated with like Mehrunes Dagon, destruction and hope and new growth and all that.
And so also in this sense though, again with like, you know, the head aflame, that is a depiction that you can see with like various heroes from Asia, and also again from like early artistic quote depictions of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And you will see like there's flame, usually like demigods or even gods battling it out. In certain like ancient Hindu scripts, you'll see them basically being like a flame because they're just like at their most powerful like astral aspects basically. Like sometimes they're even described as like flaming stars in the sky, like okay, it's like a meteorite but like, you know, like fireball and stuff. So there's it's associated with that kind of like wisdom, truth, power, because people, you know, brought fire. You know, fire is purifying in some, you know, way. It's warm, it allows you to see, it represents knowledge, it can be community. So like there's
I mean that's the root behind like Lucifer, for example, the enlightened one, light being associated with knowledge. Fire produces light, and therefore there's that connection.
Exactly. So you know, there's all different kinds of ways that humans have associated with fire, because we all have that same story, because we all kind of had to figure out that fire was very crucial to our early survival, which is also why you see as humanity advances, the types of gods change. So in the earliest days, you have gods of like fire, fertility, and like hunting and stuff, and then it moves into, you know, as we start to get more agricultural, sun gods, weather gods, people in the sky, as opposed to like concepts or like tangible things like the food and the lady who's pregnant and like the fire pit, right? And then after we get like agriculture stuff under control, it then becomes a more advanced concept as we start developing like market economics and stuff like that. So now there's a gun who punishes, you know, there's a god, not a gun, sorry. Got too American there for a second. You know, we have gods who are punishing bad people. We now have like proper laws for how to deal with things like marriage and like divorce, rape, abortion. Like that, all of a sudden, as society gets more complicated, so to have our gods and what they represent and how they act or behave or choose not to behave. You know, they're kind of more distant now. Like it's the natural progression based on the reflection of the immediate needs and concerns of humanity. And so you see that reflected just about universally with a lot of human stories. It's why like so many stories have flood stories, because earliest civilizations were based around either rivers that flooded and also in a post glacial world. So when all of a sudden the ice caps melted. You have like, oh yes, stories of like how Raven brought trees to the coast of America, or the rising tides, like the flooding rivers in China or in India or in Mesopotamia or in Egypt. Like it all starts and comes from water, and or early stories of, hey, they brought fire because that was so necessary, right? Like that's kind of why there's so much universality. And spoiler alert, folks, it's not aliens who came and warned us. It was just, these were stories that are a form of cultural memory, thousands upon thousands of years baked into our like genetic makeup at this point.
Well, I mean, I've spoken at length about the symbolism of a flame in Christian art, and how the development and recognition of that symbol was arrived at by very similar means to the way it was developed in Eastern cultures.
Well, there's. I remember when I read Angels and Demons, Dan Brown.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the things that he talked when he references real things and real statues, like those are accurate. And he was talking about, if you ever saw the movie or read the book, there's a statue made by Bernini that has to, it's the flames of Saint Agnes or something like that. That has an angel, and he's got an arrow, which I think is supposed to be phallic symbolism. And is it the ecstasy of, I don't know, but this woman, and she's like wreathed in flames as this angel is over her. And it's thought to be a reference to women's sexuality, and that Bernini stuck it in there as, kind of to troll on the church a little bit.
A lot of those guys did that.
Yeah. That was
There's a lot of that
shit. My favorite is one of the stories from Tumblr where like the church commissioned, we need a statue of Lucifer, and like one of the great sculptors said, okay, great, and they're like, no, it's too hot. It's too hot. It's making all the ladies nervous. That's bad. And so they contracted out like his brother or his cousin or something, and he made the devil even hotter.
Well, what you ever notice? You ever notice how in the Sistine Chapel, where there's God and man like touching fingers or whatever, and the shape around God is in the shape of a human brain?
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Anyway,
the cerebellum at the back. Yeah, and there was also the papal throne that had the gates of hell opening behind it. Yeah, that was like, ooh, spicy.
Yeah.
Throwing heat.
They did a lot.
The next line is the sun shall be
eaten. Going to draw a bunch of dicks on it though.
Yeah. And the next line is the sun shall be eaten by lions, which cannot be found yet in Veloth. In the New Worldling School, I spent a lot of time working on this comment. In fact, I remember what I was doing. I was actually on vacation for like 3 days, and I spent the entire 3 days working on this specific sermon. And
be like Kirkbride, isolate for days.
Yeah, except I got even less work done.
Get your big gulp cup ready.
Yeah, and so I spent a lot of time trying to figure this one out. I made some very good conclusions, and then I thought I still don't have it, and so I actually asked Kirkbride what the fuck it meant, and he said, think about Christian imagery. So it did, and it didn't help at all. Because the problem is that the sun and lions are both largely in Christian imagery. They both usually symbolize the same fucking thing, which is God or the power of God or similar, The only other thing that is associated with Christians and lions is the lions that they used to feed Christians to in ancient Rome. So what the, the sun shall be eaten by lions kind of sounds like it's saying, God will be consumed by Roman lions.
Oh, no, yeah.
Which doesn't really seem to have much of an application here in this current context.
Is that all Kirkbride gave you?
Yeah, that is literally it.
Wow.
He said, think about Christian imagery, and I was like, yeah, it's all that he gave me, but also in his defense, it's all I really told him to give me. I was like, I just want to nudge. I don't want you to hand it to me.
That's fair.
Should have gotten a hand to you, but maybe
the Line of Judah.
Yeah. I was just gonna pull it up. Yeah.
Okay, well then, two things. Now that Andrew fucking cut me off at the knees with that one.
I didn't say it. That was him.
So look, Lion of Judah, but also in Christian imagery, especially with how you have the Christianization of Europe in the wake of the collapse of the Roman Empire. What you also have is, with many royal houses, taking a lion to represent royalty, even though they were no longer there. So like on so many coats of arms, from like England to various German ones to like Sweden, fucking Denmark, Finland, it's the lion is like the royal symbol. It's kingly. So when I see the sun will be eaten by lions, I'm thinking, oh, the ruling kings of Mundus are going to come for Anu and his fucking corpse in the sun. Okay. That's kind of the weird kind of connection I'm making in that way.
Could be. Yeah. I like that one better than my conclusion.
There you go.
What?
You're welcome.
6 of the vests and garments worn by the suppositions of men. So we're gonna like, we kind of
have a fashion show.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also it's a little bit of like in previous sermon, it's the robes of Atatur, I think. And I mentioned something that 6 of the vests and garments worn by the suppositions of men could be a reference to the 6 walking ways. It could be suggested that the 6 walking ways are not founded on direct knowledge, but rather hypotheses that need to be tested, which is not bad. So proceed only with the simplest of terms, for all others are enemies and will confuse you. And that's kind of like, that's just generally good advice. You know, if you can't explain something, then you don't really understand it. And that's, I think that's related. 6 of the formulas to heaven by violence, ones that you have learned by studying these words. Again, it's the 6 walking ways.
Yeah, it's hard not to see that as the walking ways.
Yeah.
I mean, anytime 6 comes up, that's usually probably a fair bet.
I love how in the real world people are like, the number 6 will multiply that by 3 and that's Satan. Yeah. And then meanwhile here we are like, oh cool, the way
6 walking ways. Yeah, bitching.
yeah. What's that
awesome,
video of the lady all mad because monster has demonic symbolism?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was a great video. But yeah, right. So yeah, walking ways. So we got that figured out.
The Father is the machine in the mouth of a machine. We're talking about Sathasil here. I mean, we can't get any more obvious than that. His only mystery is an invitation to elaborate further, which I refuse to elaborate on. The Mother is active and clawed like a Nyx hound, yet she is the holiest of those that reclaim their days. I mean, again, it's Amalexia. She's the active element. Clawed like a Nyx hound is, they're dangerous. They're and the Mother and I am is very dangerous. She's face snakes.
The Nyx hound isn't interesting. Yeah, I mean, why not a bear? Why use Nyx hound?
Because that's what's in Morrowind.
It's
why the apple in Genesis was probably a pomegranate, but it's like pomegranates don't grow in England.
But we also have things that are like Aelits and Kagudi.
Sure.
I would imagine, why not something that has more power behind it than a Nyx hound, which is, relatively lithe and slender, and they, they're not particularly dangerous.
Maybe they're protective and we just never got that established.
Maybe it is a
Chris, yes.
So Nyx hounds were originally supposed to be dimensional creatures from Oblivion or an adjacent plane.
Oh.
And one of the original ideas for Morrowind, when they were pitching around the kind of things that you were going to do, the kind of quests you were going to do, was that you were going to have a quest where you had to protect a what do you call it? The wise women of the Ashlanders.
Wise woman.
Yeah. Okay. And she was going to do a ritual of some kind. And while she was doing the ritual, portals would open and these Nyx hounds would come in and attack you. Because that's where they were. But that's why they were called Nyx hounds, like zero. Is that they were coming from like a zeroth dimension, like another plane of oblivion or something like that. And that was the original idea behind Nyx hounds. They were originally designed to be that, and then they just decided they needed another critter to run around, and so that's what they. And they killed that.
Like, God forbid if I have a 5 minutes of peaceful walking to the next village over. It's like, hey, nah, man, you got to basically like fight through a small army of natural enemies before I reach Pelagiat. And I'm like, great. Thank you. I'm having so much fucking fun here, Todd Howard.
Every time I swing, there's a 50% chance I'm going to lose. That's just terrific.
Boots of blinding speed.
It's like, all right, let me walk backwards towards the town. Hit this shit. Miss. Okay.
I'm having fun. All right. So the sun is myself, Vec, and I am unto 3, 6, 9, and the rest that come after. Glorious and sympathetic, without borders, utmost in the imperfection of this world, and the other sword and symbol, pale like gold. Vivec likes to listen to herself talk.
Yeah.
But I went into all of these in the New Whirling School. The idea of Sothisil and Amalexia being the father and the mother is something we covered all the way back in Sermon 1. And 3, 6, and 9, and the rest that come after is I mean, it's a little bit of numerology. I suggest that 3 is, of course, obviously Om Savi, 6 is the number of the Walking Ways, and 9 is the number that's associated with Lorcan. That's like the idea of Vivec being a fan of the Doom Drum is probably well established. We all kind of know how that goes. And the rest that come after is I had this whole thing about like all the remaining numbers about and their symbolism for Vivec, how they could apply and so on. Glorious and sympathetic words. Without borders is without limit. Or it's Doctors Without Borders, but I don't think that's it. By the way, great charity if you want to donate to anybody. Utmost in the imperfections of this world and the others. And so, like, we've mentioned other worlds before. The Dwemer have an opinion about what the other worlds are. That doesn't seem to match anybody else. Irritatingly. Sword and symbol is, again, warrior poet. Pale like gold. That's the Chimer. Tweet pop done.
It's all pretty straightforward if you know what you're looking for.
So there's a fourth kind of philosophy that uses nothing but disbelief. I don't think this has anything to do with the fourth walking way, and I apparently am not. Not many people share that opinion apparently, but I don't think it does. I think it's called a fourth type of disbelief because we were just talking about Om Savi as the first 3, and the fourth kind of disbelief I think is the Dwemer. I think that because at this time in the lands of the Veloth, that is the only other major religion that or belief system that applies. The 3 are Om Savi are generally going to be including also Daedra worship, and so the fourth I think is a reference to the Dwemer, and their idea of disbelief is. I mean, they don't believe in gods of any kind. They're the closest you can get to atheists in a world where there are literally gods.
That must be fun. I'm just imagining a Dwemer walking up to Maywood's day, and it's like, you don't exist.
Yeah, you're bullshit. Hey, you. Yeah, you're bullshit. Yeah, you're bullshit. You know it.
We
ass.
need little animations like that.
Bullshit ass looking ass.
Just have someone animate our bullshitting here.
Yeah, people do it for the Game Grumps. Why not?
They get more hits than us. For the sword, I mean the sensible.
Like
for the word, I mean the dead.
We get like 20 live viewers.
Ooh, there are dozens of us. For the sword, I mean the sensible. For the word, I mean the dead.
We're a baseball team.
This is it. Basically, what we're talking about. Like Vivec does this a lot in the sermons, which is as he alternates back and forth between the sword and the word to show opposites. So in this particular case, we're talking about the sensible and the dead. Sensible could be things that you can sense. Dead can be the ancestors or similar. I speculated a lot about this, but I don't really think I ever hit a a really good solid.
I mean, maybe the living are the only people you can negotiate with.
Right. Sure.
No, but you can negotiate with gods, which are like kind of living, but also in a different way.
I mean, yeah, it doesn't make sense if you consider. I mean, there's the very first quest you do in the Morrowind X pack in ESO, where you help Canon Sarioni, who is later buried in that same tomb. You have to help him speak to one of his ancestors, and you ask for 3 questions, and of course they're all about if you hadn't played Morrowind beforehand, you wouldn't have noticed, but they're asking about Dagoth, the Heart of Lorkhan, and I think like the nature of their divinity or something, and so you effectively negotiate with this ghost to get those answers. So, I mean, what I just said about living people being the only sensible ones, I mean, it doesn't work considering that. But anyway.
So I am Vec, your protector, and the protector of Red Mountain until the end of days, which are numbered 3,333. So I did the math.
I looked at that one time.
That puts us in the 9th year of the First Era. That's not very far. And unfortunately, it doesn't really add up to anything. It could be 4 groups of 3, like the Anticipations, the Trian, and like another pair of triples that I can't think of. I mean, there's not a whole lot there.
I read into this one time. This was in the Facebook group a long time ago. I think the days are numbered 3333. I looked up real world symbolism of the number 3 and how it also applied in universe, and I came to the conclusion, I don't remember what steps I took, but I came to the conclusion that it's referencing Amaranth until this world no longer matters. The days are numbered 3333. They're numbered until Amaranth starts. Something along those lines. Maybe he was talking about, or maybe he's talking about Landfall. One of those two. I'll have to go back.
Well, I'll put it this way. I think it's unlikely that it's numbering any that's where it's going, because those are all concepts that Kirkbride came up with many, many years after he wrote this. So I strongly suspect that this is just something that he put in because he liked the look of it. And it is sort of like a Crowleyan-esque thing, because Crowley does some stuff where he talks about, like, the number of days are numbered, et cetera, and he'll do that a lot with like the numerology of Thelema is very complicated as well, like the word. Below me is the Savage, which we needed to remove ourselves from the Altmer, which is a very interesting comment on Altmer culture. Definitely some shade. Above me is a challenge which bathes itself in fire and is the essence of God.
Secret Flame.
Yeah, and it could be, now Vivec could be talking about Boethia, as in, is the essence of a god, but I think more than likely the challenge is Vivec becoming a god, in broad sense. Could also be Dagoth, but I don't think. I don't know. It seems a little vague. Through me you are decided, unlike the prophets that have borne your name before. This has got to be a reference to the Nerevarine. Gotta be. 6 are the walking ways, from enigma to enemy to teacher. I think we've already covered what the walking ways are. Boethia and Azura are the principles of the universal plot, which is begetting, which is creation, and Mephala makes of it an art form. I wrote a whole fucking article about this thing. I mean, if you want to read it, it's on the New Worldling School. It's really complex. It involves the tarot and a lot of symbolism.
Have fun. Have a good fun afternoon, y'all.
Yeah. Why does it matter if MK didn't know the implications of what he wrote? Doesn't matter at all. I'm actually glad you mentioned that. Doesn't matter at all if he didn't understand the implications. As a matter of fact, I think Kirkbride actually said that Amaranth was something he realized he'd hidden in his own stuff. And that's kind of the way, like Kirkbride has said before, that his original intention with the 36 Lessons was to write a book that had actual magic in it. And I can't think of any clearer definition of magic than putting in content that you're not aware of. Anyway, for the sword, I mean the first night. For by the word, I mean the dead. We're back again with the first night being begetting, and the dead being the opposite of that. There will be a splendor in your name when it is said to be true. This is also a reference to the Book of the Law by Aleister Crowley. There is a splendor in my name hidden and glorious, and the son of midnight is ever the sun. What does that mean? I don't fucking know. I mean, a lot of the Book of the Law was written for Crowley by a god.
It sounds to me like when everyone knows your name, it will be in a good way.
Oh yeah, it could be, sure.
Everyone will praise you when, oh hey, it was Nerevar who did that. Oh, well,
oh
Nerevar's
shit!
Awesome.
I know Nerevar. That's my boy.
Yeah.
6 of the Guardians of Veloth, 3 before, and they are born again, and they will test you until you have the proper tendencies of a hero. This sounds to me like Almsevi testing Nerevarines over and over and over again until they have the proper tendencies of a hero. In other words, until they can be a hero, until they can fulfill the myth structure, until they can, kick ass and chew bubblegum.
Until you come along.
Yeah, until your ass.
Which that seems to imply that it is Almsevi that is facilitating the prophecy that Azura put forth, reducing them from gods.
Yes.
To cast down the false gods. So it sounds like they're going, yeah, let's make this happen. Which.
Well, okay, so greater cosmic plan, right?
Yes.
Yeah. It's like, listen, I like, being king shit around here, but eventually Bardau's got to fall. You feel me? Or,
Yeah, I know.
I'm going to be really sad when I kill Satasil. I've had thousands of years of, I can't exactly say fond memories, but, memories nonetheless. Hang on, we're gods together. It's going to be a shame when I have to kill them for the greater scheme, right? And
we had,
the hands. Like,
times.
It's all part of the plan so we can form Voltron in like an era or two,
Right, yeah. And so there's a world that is sleeping and you must guard against it. If you haven't played Morrowind, then what are you even doing here? For the sword,
dreamer is awake.
Yeah. For the sword, I mean the dual nature. For the word, I mean animal life. Dual nature is I think I suggested that it had something to do with chiral elements in Enantiomorph. Animal life was a tough one.
It sounds more to me like dual nature being the ability to make a choice. Are you civilized or are you not? That is your choice. Whereas an animal does not have that choice.
Does not have that choice.
They are animals. And
that's what separates us from them.
That's kind of what I gleaned from that. I don't know if that's.
So on that same token, for the word I mean preceded by a wolf. For the sword I mean preceded by a sigh. There's, it's
a sigh sounds like fatigue. It's or displeasure in the fact that a choice must be made, that you have to decide who you are of one nature or another, whereas a wolf already made that decision. Because it didn't get it.
It knows its nature, but it also didn't have a choice. Yeah.
Wait. Hang on. For by the sword, I mean the dual nature. For by the word, I mean animal life. For by the sword, I mean preceded by a sigh. For by the word, I mean preceded by a wolf. Is that some Nord totemic shit?
I thought that might have been where you were going with it. I remember actually trying to tackle that shit, and I didn't get anywhere with it because I couldn't figure out why Vivec would be bringing up Nordic symbolism in the 36 lessons.
Because
and what is intrinsically supposed to be a Velothi
thing. It has to do with Talos.
It has to do with
Talos. Which I mean, I can see that. I mean, when we think of wolf with a U, I mean, there's an obvious connection between wolf.
Right. Okay. Sorry. Again, Nord is not my strong suit. Who's connected with the wolf totem for the Nords again?
The wolf is Mara.
The wolf is Mara. Okay.
Yeah. The mother wolf. That's why Patama's the wolf queen. Mother wolf with her pups is the.
For the word, I'm preceded by a wolf. So, if I'm going down the Nord challenge, that could make a little bit of sense, but it's still
maybe,
like, why would he be talking about that though? So,
maybe it's referring to wolf as motherhood.
Well, then it would be the sword would be preceded by a wolf, because the sword is I am, and the word is fatherhood, or Sothisil, or not, because Sothisil is a mother.
Symbolism in Morrowind.
Or is sword phallic?
Everything's a phallus if you're brave or horny enough.
I mean, it is Vivec, after all. Or sitting here with dead air trying to grapple with what swords and words and wolves.
Well, again, keep in mind that these are supposed to be opposites. So the sword and the word. We are talking about now. This at the same time might not just reference Almalexia and Sothisil. It could just reference the sword and the word as it applies to Vivec's nature as a warrior poet. So it could be the two sides of Vivec.
I mean, I think there's definitely multiple layers of meaning here, because I mean, sword and word are obviously related to warrior.
Godhood has layers like an onion.
It's like an onion.
Cakes. Everybody loves cakes. Cakes have layers.
There you
go. I want to see what Twitch is saying.
You want to see what who said, or
I'm just Twitch chat.
Okay, because I don't.
Okay, I wanted to see if they're looking
at the lesson, trying to make sense of the last bit, which is like, all right, Kirkbride, this one's a real challenge. Sometimes you give me them softballs, and then Kirkbride hands you something, and it's like, so this is like you start me off with a word scramble, and now you've just handed me a fourth dimensional Rubik's cube. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still in the camp of dual nature of the sapient being. You choose who you are.
See you again.
Animal life being, you don't get a choice. You are what you are. Preceded by a sigh is frustration with the fact that you have to make that choice, and a wolf doesn't have to, but they're dangerous all the same. I mean, that's the most concise and consistent.
Yeah, but I'm just trying to think of like in the terms of like Morrowind, like we see stuff like Netroman's wife, Nixhound. Why the fuck is there a wolf? We don't hear about wolves in Morrowind. There's like
which is why I think it's associated with animal life. I think wolf is just a synecdoche for animals in general, because they're primal and feral and potentially dangerous. If you go out into the wilderness, I mean, you don't want to run into wolves. Like, that's kind of a trope, or civilization maybe being civilized, and that's what the dual nature is referencing. Could it be rural and urban? Could that be the dual nature, and the animal has neither because it's just an animal?
It's a toughie, right? Yeah, 3 days in seclusion it took me just to get what I got.
Sigh, and with the sigh, I mean, there are multiple ways to interpret sigh. Is it in frustration? Is it in derision? Is it out of lust? Is it?
It could also just be the fourth breath of the universe.
It could be. Yeah. So I mean, there's
there's a world.
6 potential meanings right off the top of our head.
Yeah, Baka, it's guesswork.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm gonna stand by what I've said before. I'm trying to piece together other things here, and I keep coming back to that. That's the most consistent. At least it makes sense.
Yep. It's rough. It's gonna make sense to you, but it,
Yeah. That doesn't have. That
doesn't matter.
Yeah. And maybe that's the point.
Well, and also, then maybe that is the point. And also, the good news is it's the last of Sermon 6. So we made it through 2 today, and that's great. We need to do more of these.
Hey. Just 30 more to go.
Just 30 more to go.
We're 1/6 of the way through.
Yeah, there you go. That's a way to think about it. Look at all the ground we've covered.
Maybe we'll get some Skull mixed in there somewhere.
Yeah, that's right. We still have to schedule the Skull cast, which is going to have a special guest if we're lucky.
Didn't we have an email that we were thinking about too?
I don't think we did. If we did, then I didn't hear about it.
Let's
Uh-oh.
see. Oh, let me.
If there were any emails, we apologize.
If there were emails, we apologize.
That's the wrong channel. I don't want the announcements channel. I know that the Selectives Lorecast are streaming right now.
Yes,
We
do an
are.
episode on the Isle of Solstheim.
I mean, Solstheim could be fine, but I mean, Skull is going to cover a lot of that already. I mean, we could, because I don't know. Is there enough about Skull to just do them on their own? I
think there is. It might not be.
Yeah, but then like Solstheim kind of becomes a backdrop to talking about the Skull.
Because I mean, we could also talk about Reeklings. We could talk about Karstag. We could talk about Reavers.
The Utherfreak.
Yeah, Utherfreak.
And that's not including the great stuff that we get from the new Solstheim expansion. From
because I don't think Thirsk is actually a Skull settlement. I think it's like they're considered two separate, places, two separate groups.
Not sure, but either way, the Skull could be fun because it's like, oh, what's this? Indigenous Nords? Wowie zowie.
Yep.
And it's like, they're kind of Vikings, but also not Vikings.
Yeah.
That makes them interesting.
Kind of Eskimos. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sort of Christians. Yeah.
That's a slur, by the way. We should not say
Eskimo. And if we talk about Thirsk, we naturally have to talk about Beowulf, because that's literally where it was stolen from.
Okay.
And also Ravenrock.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Ravenrock is big. Yeah,
I like those quest lines in the original Morrowind expansion. That for me was fun. I like that part of it.
Thirsk is just Hrothgar, like all of it.
That's all it is. Just it's whatever. It's fucking Hrothgar, man.
It's every right-wing white
Grendel
dude's
is the Utherfreck.
Just a bunch of dudes being dudes,
man.
hardcore,
Got our shirts off.
Just broing out. Not a chicken side, dude. Total fucking heaven, bro. I mean,
it could be awesome. I mean, terrible.
as he takes a hit off of his like gallon-sized vape.
No. It's the trend of like those goat horns for ale.
But it's a vape.
Sure.
No, just for ale, you fucking modern millennial piece of shit scumbag. Enough with the vapes. I'm talking about I'm talking about the Viking fanboys who are like, yo, like I'm like 1/18th Scandinavian, therefore I'm a Viking. It's
basically
like,
a Viking.
Bro, you're from Indiana. Like, shut up.
I was talking about dude bros, like, with the sunglasses with like the lines in them and like a backwards snapback
and a Jeep.
T-shirt says Thrasher on it.
Sure.
Yeah.
But they cut the sleeves off. Or is that too hayseed? I don't know.
I did a cartoon one time because I used to be a cartoonist. I did a cartoon one time where it was Juliet up on the balcony, and Romeo was like a fuck boy, and he was like, "Yo, Romeo, send me them digits." And
yeah, I remember
like emojis in there. He had a vape, and
I think I saved that image somewhere just so I could be like, this is rare. I need to save it.
Yeah. And then Juliet's like, what? Because it was just me making fun of, how language in general, how we don't understand Shakespearean, but if we were to talk to Shakespeareans, they wouldn't recognize us. Like, they wouldn't recognize what we're saying. That was kind of the joke I was making.
Well, we got another 2 weeks. So in 2 weeks, we're going to do as many more sermons as we can cram into an hour and a half or two.
How big are the next two or?
Let's see. We're talking about 7 and 8.
7. Seven's
not too bad.
I mean, it's got another chunk of what looks like poetry.
Yeah.
So that's going to take some time. I mean, if those last 4 lines of Sermon 6 are any indication.
It's not bad.
8 will be a bit more to kind of chew through.
Yeah. So I think at the very least, I mean, we can get through Sermon 7 absolutely, and maybe Sermon 8.
Sermon 8 is the formation of Amsabi, so we need to spend a little bit of time on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we might be able to get 2 done. So thanks to everybody for tuning in. Don't really have any other announcements, so thanks. See you in a bit.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.